This is Joanne Moore from Primetime Live at the Duxbury Senior Center. I'm so fortunate to have two guests with me from Duxbury FACTS, Reverend Catherine Cullen, and Karen Wong. They are part of a group that is making a difference in the South Shore and in the community with the opioid crisis. And I'm so glad you're here today to share some information with our viewers about this disease and what's out there for people in the community. So thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. So how did Duxbury FACTS get started, and why did it get started?
I think Karen needs to tell that story.
I can give you a little background on it. And first off, I want to say that while the opioid crisis is real and important and something we are addressing with Duxbury FACTS, that's not the only purpose that we have.
Great.
We're actually an education and prevention organization as well as intervention. Okay. And it's mental wellness, stress, substances of all kind, including opioids. Kind of the background is I'm part of a larger group, and actually South Shore FACTS is our umbrella. We're under the umbrella of South Shore FACTS, which now is comprised of about 27 communities on the South Shore. And each community has a coalition that's addressing these issues. And many years ago, the leaders of South Shore FACTS, Dr. Barbara Green and Kim Noble, asked if I would start a coalition in Duxbury. And I was hesitant, to be honest with you, because about 10 years ago, I was part of the Youth Risk Behavior Task Force, tackling similar issues. And it was going well for a couple of years and then lost steam. And so I was hesitant 10 years later to start another group, but they offered us a professional facilitator to help us get the group started. I just would bring people together. So I said, I can do that. And the Solstice Foundation actually funded that. And I was tasked with bringing community members from all sectors, school, elected officials, parents, students, business owners, you name it, physicians. And the group came together in May of 2015, and we had a great meeting, a great group. In a nutshell, what was so remarkable to me was how this group took off. It was a whole different world than it was 10 years ago. All of a sudden, people were less afraid to come out of the shadows to say, yeah, I'm concerned about a loved one, or I'm concerned about myself. And the participation was robust, and we got a lot of momentum. So we're just, I think, the sad news is that we have issues. The great news is that people are coming together and working together to try to make life better.
And that there's help out there and people are knowing about it too. I think that's a really wonderful piece of it.
And like Karen said, people are acknowledging the problem in their family, the problem among someone they know. I think one of the reasons that the issue didn't move originally years ago when you did the risky behavior group was because people wouldn't admit that there was a problem in our town or that there was a problem in their family or that sort of thing. And you have to acknowledge the problem before you can address it. I remember at the first anniversary of our Duxbury FACTS, we actually went around the room and we asked everybody, what motivated you to be working on FACTS this year? And just about everybody had a personal connection to someone, a loved one who had an alcohol or substance abuse issue, right down from Peter Holden, who was the former president of Jordan Hospital, Beth Israel Deacon of South.
Right.
I mean, he talked about it. We all, had a motivation to do this work, and we were willing to name it. To me, that's been a tremendous difference. I got into this work when Karen asked me to do it. My motivation was, but at that point, I think in 2015, I had done this memorial service for 3 or 4 young people, wonderful young people, all men, believe it or not, in their late 20s to early 30s who had died of heroin overdose. So I absolutely saw the issue rising in our community, and I, came aboard. Back in 2015, when I would do a memorial service, most of the time the parents would say, but we're not going to mention how our son passed away. In the obituary, it would say, died unexpectedly. And at the service, we would never address that. That has absolutely changed over the past couple of years. Parents are very honest about how their loved one passed away. To me, that's made it possible for us to make the progress that we're making in this issue, to be honest.
And it's nice that all groups from every aspect of the town has come together to work on this.
I think the police department has been amazing. There's been a tremendous cultural shift in the police enforcement. I think that now, rather than prosecution, it's, assistance.
Yeah.
Want to talk about what?
Yep. There's a lot to talk about here with the police department. They've been incredible with the intervention piece and just helping community members out. They have instituted the crisis intervention team, excuse me, where trained officers will go in and assist families where there's been some kind of a crisis, usually substance, but it could be beyond that, and offering not only to walk them through the immediate process of what's happened with their loved one, but to be there for follow-up. And folks need now not be afraid of getting arrested if they call the police to come in because they're worried about a loved one.
What a culture shift that is.
That is
So, Matt, Chief Clancy, our chief of the Duxbury Police Force, he's been a very active part of our Duxbury FACTS team. Several of his officers have been active. Jimmy Tugas in particular.
He's terrific.
He's terrific. So the culture shift there has been amazing. We realize now that this is we call it substance use disorder. It's an illness. It's not a moral failing of some sort. And boy, that shift alone has been tremendous. So for the first time over the past couple of years, I feel there's hope because we are able to shine the light on this situation. It's not in the closet in the shadows any longer. And there are so many aspects of the community that are coming together to work on the problem together.
And I saw on Facebook yesterday that you were at the 7th Annual Prevention of Underage Drinking and Substance Use Conference. And tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned a little bit the growth in that conference and that shift as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. This conference, 7 years. It's sponsored by Youth Health Connection, which is part of South Shore Hospital. And 7 years ago, there were about 50 people in attendance. And now there's over 250 people representing 27 communities, which is huge. And it's really all these coalitions coming together, sharing strategies and issues in their towns and seeing how we can work together to make things better. This year's topic was around marijuana. As you know, recreational marijuana was passed recently, and shops will be opening up. Recreational pot shops are going to be opening up in Maryland, Massachusetts in 2018. And so this conference talked about mostly the effect of marijuana on the teenage brain. I think that's what people don't understand. It's not the same marijuana that it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
It's not your grandmother's marijuana.
No. It's very potent, and all the research shows for many years that the teenage brain is developing and is very vulnerable to any kind of substance, and marijuana included. And just because it was made legal doesn't mean that it's safe.
Right.
And it's really important for parents and kids to understand the risks. And it's also important to understand that teenagers are hardwired to take risks. That's just where they're at developmentally.
Right.
And as parents, we need to model appropriate behavior, just like we should model responsible drinking of alcohol. Same thing with marijuana. It's really not the benign substance that many people think it is.
And as we were driving down here, we were talking to the town manager's secretary, and we are going to be one of the groups that's advocating for a ban of the sale of marijuana pot shops in our town, which we're able to do because under the legislation that was passed last spring, if a town voted against legalization, they simply, in order to ban pot shops, they simply have to vote that at their next town meeting. So that there will be a warrant article at our next town meeting as to whether or not Duxbury will allow pot shops.
Yep. And just a couple quick statistics that are pretty startling. If a teenager before the age of 18 starts using drugs, there's a 1 in 4 chance that they will become addicted. If a person waits to over 21 to start trying any kind of alcohol or marijuana, it's a 1 in 25 chance.
Wow, what a difference.
It's huge. And this statistic...
And is that just the development of the brain?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Sort of the part of the brain, the emotion, the risky behavior, the pleasure center is here, the thinking is here, and the synapses really don't fully integrate until you're 26.
I was thinking it was 25 or 26.
Yeah. This statistic really stunned me. 9 out of 10 adolescents who seek treatment for substance use, it's because of marijuana.
Really?
I was completely stunned about that.
I would think alcohol. Maybe that's what most people would think.
And
So that just shows how important it is to kind of consider marijuana very seriously. It is legal for adults, but we need to protect the younger population.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a serious issue.
Wow. And so how are you getting the word out about this?
a number of ways. We have a very robust membership email list of about 200 people from the community. We have meetings 4 times a year, which we publicize in a variety of ways. We have an executive committee, which has about 12 members on it, cross-section from the community.
Pretty good stakeholders. The new superintendent in our town has joined our executive committee.
And there's a steering committee. I'm the coordinator of Duxbury FACTS, and Catherine and Sue Bradford are the co-chairs, and Ann Ward is our publicity chair. Or that's probably not the right word, but
you're doing really amazing work. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to learn more about what you're doing and how people can get involved and all the other things that are making a difference in Duxbury and on the South Shore and in Massachusetts, probably in the country, just by getting this information out there. So thank you for being on the show today.
Listen, I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you judge me for having a problem. No one is going to know that I need help. I need help. I know that no one is going to judge me for having a problem. I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you listen.
So we're back to Primetime Live at the Duxbury Senior Center, and we're learning a lot about Duxbury FACTS and what they're doing in Duxbury as well as on the South Shore. And before the break, we were talking about this amazing conference that has grown, and we were talking on the break about it's not just use, it's also stress. So can we talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, thank you very much, Joanne. What came out of it, sort of all the different coalitions would sit together, and I had the pleasure of sitting at a table with a lot of educators from Duxbury, and they represented from Alden all the way through high school. And what kept coming out, not only at our table, but in conversations with other folks there, is stress, and the kids feeling so much stress, and the concern that they just don't have the coping skills. And so many adolescents would then turn to substances, which may mask the feeling for a little while, but then they're not learning strategies on dealing with just everyday life. And it's really, really important, I think, as parents, that we need to, allow our kids. There was a term that I learned, productive struggle. We all are going to go through it, whether it's being frustrated learning how to tie your shoe, or how do I get through all my homework. You need to slow it down and just go step by step and learn how, and let our kids feel that. Because the only way that the kids are going to be able to handle whatever comes their way is being able to like wrestle with that struggle.
Right.
And not
And I
swoop
think
in.
it's also important for parents and kids to learn coping mechanisms, how to deal with stress. We start every one of our FACTS meetings with 5 minutes of meditation. So it's so interesting. I mean, I think when we first started it, we have the police chief, we've got the superintendent of schools, we've got the assistant. So, and there was maybe a little resistance in the room at first, but now I remember someone saying after the 5 minutes, that was the most peaceful 5 minutes I've had all day.
Yep.
So we are modeling that, well, it has to begin with wellness and learning coping strategies. That's kind of one of the most important ways that we can avoid drug and alcohol abuse if we all learn how to, manage the things in our life.
Maybe we need 5 minutes of meditation in Duxbury the
At
bell
every
goes
meeting.
off.
That's like my dream. Every public
Yeah.
meeting, 5 minutes. 5 minutes before town meeting. Wouldn't that be something?
I think the dynamic might change.
The first time you try it, it seems like a really long time.
It does.
I just came back from a yoga retreat, so I
There you go.
Yeah, but it's a
now
wonderful.
it's on our agenda. Meditation.
Yeah.
I ring the bell. 5 minutes later, ring the bell again.
What a wonderful way to
Isn't
start
that
a
cool?
meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we're modeling wellness as well. That's part of our mission.
And hopefully people take that home and incorporate that in their lives and in their kids' lives. And
Right. We're actually going to be co-sponsoring an event on October 25th with the Parent Connection. Dr. Milo, she goes by that name. Her last name's too long for me to say properly anyway. And it's all about how to incorporate that, strategies for parents to work with in their families on helping their kids manage stress
So
in a
where
very
will-
holistic way.
where will
at
that
the
be
Performing
held?
Arts Center at 7
Okay.
o'clock in the evening.
And is there a fee or is it just a free program?
There is, I think it's $5. The Parent Connection. It's if you go on the Parent Connection website,
Okay.
you can
Get that information.
Yeah, it's less money if you buy the ticket in advance than at the door.
Right.
So,
But
and
an
it just goes to
important
cover her costs.
program for anyone
Yes.
of any age
Yes,
to attend.
absolutely.
Exactly.
I think whether you're a student or anybody.
Yes.
And our understanding is that at the end of her speaking, she brings a few people out of the audience and works with them around some of these tools. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting.
Great, great. So hopefully people add new things into their toolbox, so to
Exactly.
speak.
And it is
Exactly.
important also, you asked about our meeting schedule. We have a support group called Just the Facts. As you know, meets every Monday evening at 7 o'clock at the Duxbury Senior Center. And it's run by folks in the recovery community, and it's open to anyone who's just looking for help for themselves or for a loved one or a friend. I like to think of it as a soft landing for somebody that doesn't know where to go if they're concerned about someone they care about. And the people running it, they're local folks, and if they can't help you, they can put you in touch with people who can.
Right. And people in the audience might not know, but on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, we have a AA meeting that runs 24 hours at the Senior Center. And it's really just for community, just a place to go if you need it. And we've been doing that since we opened. So that
awesome.
may be a
That's really
resource
great.
people may not know about. So on the break, we talked about Duxbury FACTS is a 501(c)(3).
Yes, it is.
So tell me a little bit about that piece of your operation.
Well, administratively, like Karen said, we have a small board. Karen, Sue Bradford from the Duxbury Student Union, myself, and Ann Ward are the board members. But we are formally incorporated as a nonprofit, so folks can contribute and get that wonderful tax deduction. At this point, if someone wants to make a monetary contribution, they need to send it to us at our post office box, which is P.O. Box 1967, easy to remember,
Okay.
Duxbury 02331. So we're hoping to get a donate button on our
Great.
Facebook page soon, but because we just recently incorporated as a 501c3.
And do you have a website as well in case people
Yep,
want to
we
have?
sure do. Yep.
And what's that called?
www.duxburyfacts.org.
Okay. So we were talking a little bit about the crisis and the use and misuse. Do you think the numbers are going up or going down, or what's happening?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think one thing that's really changed the game a little has been Narcan. So obviously, some of the deaths from overdose have been reduced because of Narcan reversals, but the usage I don't think has really plateaued or yet. I honestly don't. I think that it's the deaths might have leveled off, but the usage hasn't leveled off.
Right. And I think that I have some optimism for the future because there's been so much, excuse me, talk about the prescribing practices and getting opioid prescriptions after a oral surgery or a sports injury. And I think people are more aware of it now.
In fact, there's legislation now that really
It's
restricts
changing that.
how many pills a doctor can prescribe. I've now probably done the service for 8, and they're all young men, and almost all of them started their drug use issue with us. They were either high school or college athletes, had an injury, had a pain, prescription appropriate, but once the prescription ended, they found other ways to get the pills, and then the next thing you knew, they were into heroin. And the heroin we have today is so unforgiving. It's laced with fentanyl, which is an incredibly powerful drug, and I would say 2/3 of the folks that I have been involved with, they had a pattern of relapse and remission, remission, and they would relapse and they would start at the same level that they had been in the past, and they would be gone with that first usage. Really tragic.
Right. So I know at the police department there is a place that you can bring your unused medications. Do you want to talk about that, because many people may not know about that?
It's a drop-off. So if you have a prescription from a doctor and you haven't used all the pain medication, you can bring it to the police station and just,
24 hours a day, it's unlocked. You can just walk right in.
Yeah. And you can keep your name on the prescription, and I think they get burned, actually.
I'm not sure how they get disposed of, but just.
And so what other things are you working on going forward?
Well, I would love to tell you about our November 14th meeting. We're actually going to be focusing on opioids. It's going to be at 7 o'clock in the evening at the presentation hall in the high school, middle school. And it's kind of a 2-part program. I'll tell you about part of it, and Catherine can as well. Dr. Stanwood is an orthopedic surgeon through South Shore Hospital. And evidently South Shore Hospital has made, or at least the surgery department, have made some changes in their prescribing practice of pain medications. I don't know all the details of it, but they are going around and telling community groups about their changes. So Dr. Stanwood, who is a local Duxbury physician, is going to talk about the prescribing changes around opioids. And we also are going to have one of our members, Tony LaGreca, will be presenting a video, If Only, which talks about the culture around drugs at parties and how you can slip into addiction real fast. And
Tony was motivated because his son Matt is one of the fellows that I talked about earlier, whose service I performed. He was a 3-sport athlete at Duxbury High, went to college, had an athletic injury, was overprescribed in his father's opinion with pain meds, eventually got hooked on heroin and passed away in his early 30s after a periods of relapse and recovery. So his dad has really made it his new mission in life to stop the overprescription of pain meds, because he sees that as an absolute gateway to this further, heroin addiction. So he partnered with the Wahlberg Foundation, and we're thinking, Tony's thinking that one of the Wahlbergs are going to actually be down. Jim Wahlberg tends to come around and speak because he had an addiction problem himself. But this is part of our evening on November 14th.
Yep.
It's great to get the word out to as many people as possible and in many ways. So you did say you were on Twitter. You're on Twitter?
I think we are on Twitter.
We
I
are
don't
on
do
Twitter.
Twitter. We have Facebook page,
Yep.
Duxbury Facts. Look us up.
And do you do articles in the newspaper and things like that?
Absolutely. Ann Ward is our publicity person, and we use the social Facebook pages, the Duxbury social media pages, to get the word out. Yep.
And are there other things you want the audience to know about Duxbury Facts? Something that may inspire someone to come in or to reach out, or I think it's so important to know that the help is here.
Well, there's a message that I would like to, because we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here, and it can
right.
seem discouraging, but statistics prove that parents are the #1 influencer in their kids' lives. And keep engaged, keep the conversation going, even if they roll their eyes. It doesn't matter. That's what our job is as parents. And anyone who's interested, even slightly, we have an email, info@duxburyfacts.org. Just look up, Google Duxbury Facts.
Come to one of our meetings.
Absolutely.
They're all open meetings.
Yeah.
And I think one of the mantras that we always use is, remember, your children are watching. Model the
yes.
behavior that you want your kids to take.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this opportunity
Oh.
that we could go on. You could have the crisis intervention team from the police department come on and tell you about it. And I'd love for the folks from Just the Facts to be able to really delve into
Sure.
kind of more the personal side, like why we're doing this. We're more the action part, like trying to help solve this problem in a very pragmatic way through education and prevention and intervention. But these folks are
And
just
the personal side,
Yeah,
and what
they're-
and like you said, the police role has really changed. I'd love to have all of
Dramatically,
them
yeah.
on, and I'm so glad you came on today. I mean, this is important work that needs to be done, and thank you so much for picking up this cause and making a difference in the community. We need people like you, and thank you for being those people.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
being on today.